So yesterday we learnt about the muscles of the pectoral region, right? So there is the pectoralis major muscle, and under the pectoralis major muscle you have the pectoralis minor, subclavius, and then the last muscle is serratus anterior, right? So those were the four muscles that we learnt about. I'll quickly revise, not much, just quickly revise, and then we'll move on. Okay. So, these are the muscles of the pectoral girdle, sorry, the pectoral region, that is your serratus anterior muscle, pectoralis major, subclavius, and pectoralis minor. So, pectoralis major has two heads, the clavicular head and the sternocostal head. Clavicular head comes from the medial two-third of the clavicle, then sternocostal head from the manubrium of the sternum anterior surface, then the costal cartilages of ribs. Some books say ribs 1 to 6, other books say rib 2 to 6. Okay, both are correct. Then you have the anterior surface of the sternum of the ribs 2 to 6 as well, and adjacent to the ribs 2 to 6. Then you have the aponeurosis of the external oblique muscle. It inserts into the bicipital groove of the humerus through a bilaminar tendon, correct? So what do you mean by bilaminar tendon? It has two sheets. That is why it's called as the bilaminar tendon. So here you can see there are two sheets, the anterior sheet and the posterior sheet, both of them which attach to the intertubercular groove of the humerus, right? So this is the bilaminar tendon over here, the posterior sheet and the anterior sheet. Okay, so today okay, there are a few things that I didn't tell you regarding the bilaminar tendon. So the tendon is divided into anterior lamina and the posterior lamina. What do you mean by lamina? It is another name for sheet. Okay, so it is the anterior lamina and the posterior lamina. The anterior lamina is thicker and shorter, okay, and the posterior lamina is thinner and longer. So here you can see over here, this is the anterior lamina. You can see it is thicker but it is shorter in length, whereas the posterior lamina is thinner and longer in length. Okay, so these are the two lamina, and now we have to see what are they made of, what fibers make up the anterior and what fibers make up the posterior lamina. Now the anterior lamina is made up of the superficial fibers from the clavicle and the deep fibers from the manubrium. Okay, so this is the clavicular head, right? So the superficial fibers from the clavicular head and the deep fibers from the manubrium. Okay, so the superficial fibers from clavicular head, and below that you can see here the deep fibers coming and joining the anterior lamina. So deep fibers from manubrium, superficial fibers from the clavicular head. Okay, so that is with regards to your anterior lamina. Now coming to the posterior lamina, it is made of the fibers from front of the sternum, second and sixth costal cartilage, sternal end of sixth rib, and the aponeurosis of external oblique muscle. So apart from these two, that is the superficial fibers from clavicle and deep fibers from manubrium, the rest of it belongs to the posterior lamina. That is the sternal fibers, then the costal cartilages 2 to 6, then the external oblique aponeurosis. So all these regions form a twist and then it inserts into the posterior lamina. Okay, a few of the fibers form a twist, whereas a few fibers insert directly or straight. Okay, so did you understand this much? The bilaminar tendon has two lamina, anterior and posterior. Okay, so here you can see anterior lamina, and behind the anterior lamina you have the posterior lamina. Now the anterior lamina is thicker and shorter, and the posterior lamina is thinner and longer. Okay, so the thicker and shorter or the anterior lamina is from the superficial fibers of clavicle and deep fibers of manubrium. The posterior lamina is from front of the sternum, second to sixth costal cartilage, sternal end of sixth rib, and aponeurosis of external oblique muscle. Okay, there are few fibers that are twisted, and these twisted fibers attach into the anterior axillary fold or form the anterior axillary fold. So what is the anterior axillary fold? A few fibers that twist before inserting into the lateral lip of intertubercular groove, they twist, right? So that twist is called as the anterior axillary fold. Okay, now there are a few other points regarding pectoralis. That is, what are the structures that are under cover of the pectoralis major? That means if you lift up or you remove the pectoralis major, what can you see under it, right? So this is a big sheet-like muscle that covers the entire chest region. So under the pectoralis major, what are the different muscles that you see? What are the different bones that you see and vessels, etc. Okay, so the bones and cartilages, of course, you will see the clavicle, then you see the ribs, then you see the sternum, right? So under the pectoralis major, you have a part of the sternum, you have the clavicle medial 2/3, and then you see the ribs as well. Okay, so ribs, clavicle, sternum, as well as the costal cartilages. Okay, now coming to fascia, you have a fascia called as the clavipectoral fascia that is below the pectoralis major. So all these muscles that you see here, right? The subclavius muscle, this is the subclavius muscle here, this is the pectoralis minor muscle. All these muscles are enclosed in a fascia called as the clavipectoral fascia, okay, which is below the pectoralis major muscle. So if you remove the pectoralis major muscle, you will see this fascia, a thin sheet of connective fibrous connective tissue that covers the rest of the structures below the pectoralis muscle. So that is the clavipectoral fascia, and that is the one that you see, the fascia that you see below the pectoralis muscle. Okay. Then you have a few muscles, of course. You have the subclavius, you have the pectoralis minor, serratus anterior, intercostals. There are muscles in the space between the two ribs, and those muscles are called as intercostal muscles. So here you can see these muscles over here, right? Between the first and the second rib, between the second and the third rib, there are a few muscles. You have two fibers, that is external intercostal and internal intercostal. Okay, so the external ones attached to the ribs from the outside, internal attached to the ribs from the inside. Okay, so these are intercostal muscles, and these are also seen under the pectoralis, cover of the pectoralis major. So you can think of pectoralis major as an umbrella. Okay, if you remove the pectoralis major, you will see a few bones, that is clavicle, the sternum, then you'll see costal cartilages, then you'll see the ribs, etc. Okay, then you have a few muscles. What are the muscles? You will see subclavius, pectoralis minor, intercostal muscles, and to the side here you will see biceps brachii, which is part of the arm, and then you will see coracobrachialis, which is part of the scapula. Okay, from the scapula to the arm. Okay, coracobrachialis, I'll show you. So here, this is the biceps brachii muscle, and the so you can see one of the two heads of the biceps brachii muscle is below the pectoralis major muscle, right? So that, and then you also have the coracobrachialis muscle, also that is this muscle over here, which is below the pectoralis muscle. So these are the muscles that you're going to see under. So you have the upper parts of biceps brachii and coracobrachialis as well. What are the arteries that you see? You of course see the axillary artery. Axillary artery is the artery that supplies the muscles, the skin, everything of the axillary region. Okay, so you will see the axillary artery as well. So here you can see the axillary artery. It is placed right under the pectoralis major muscle, right? So this is again a content of the pectoralis major muscle. And then you have a few nerves, cords of the brachial plexus along with its branches, like your lateral pectoral nerve, medial pectoral nerve, all these different nerves of the brachial plexus. Is this clear? So what are the contents of the that lie below the pectoralis major? It is an important 3 marker or a 5 marker for all of you. So you should remember, you have a few bones. The bones are clavicle, the ribs, then you have the sternum, then you have the costal cartilages of the rib, etc. Okay, then you have a few muscles. What are the muscles? The subclavius muscle, pectoralis minor muscle, serratus anterior muscle. So you have the serratus anterior muscle, then you have the intercostal muscles, the upper intercostal muscles, then you have the upper part of the biceps brachii and the coracobrachialis muscle. Then, so these are all your muscles. Then you come to the artery. axillary artery is the artery that you see below the pectoralis major muscle, under cover of the pectoralis major muscle. Then you have nerves of the brachial plexus. Okay, so these are the structures that lie under the pectoralis major muscle. Okay, so this is another important question which can come with regards to pectoralis major muscle. So pectoralis major can come for a 5 mark. So the pectoralis major can come for a 5 marker. You have to write the origin, insertion, innervation, action, followed by the bilaminar tendon, followed by the structures under cover of pectoralis major. Okay, so these are all the things that you have to add along with some clinical anatomy. For the clinical anatomy, how do you test the functioning of the pectoralis major muscle, right? So that also you have to write. How do you test it? You have different methods. That is, for the different parts of the pectoralis major, you have different methods. Like for the clavicular head, what you would do, you would tell them to lift something heavy. Okay. For the sternocostal head, you will tell them to depress something heavy or pull down, right? Depress with something heavy. And a clavicular head, you should tell them to flex the arm in right angle, and sternocostal head by abducting arm to 60 degrees and then touching the opposite hip. So for sternocostal head of the opposite side, you have to abduct the arm of the other side of 60 degrees. Okay. So all these are the different ways in which the muscles of the the pectoralis major can be tested for its action. Some people might not have a pectoralis major, so that is also another clinical aspect. Okay, this is with regards to your pectoralis major muscle. So like I told you, this is an object, or this is a fibrous connective tissue that lies below your pectoralis major muscle. So in this particular picture, they have removed the pectoralis major muscle. Okay, you can see the fascia lies above the pectoralis minor but below the pectoralis major. Okay, so this fascia over here, that is from below the clavicle here, right? So this entire region is covered by a fascia called as the clavipectoral fascia. Okay, so this is a fibrous connective tissue layer that is present below the pectoralis major muscle. So that is the first thing you would write with regards to clavipectoral fascia. Okay, so it's a fibrous sheet deep to the clavicular portion of the pectoralis major muscle. It is attached to the clavicle above, right? So it is attached to the clavicle above and to the axillary fascia below. So here you can see this clavipectoral fascia is continuous with the axillary fascia over here in this region. So it is attached to the clavicle above and to the axillary fascia below. Okay. Now the upper part, it splits. Now here you can see the subclavius muscle is enclosed within the clavipectoral fascia. So imagine you have the subclavius muscle like this. The clavipectoral fascia will form a split and form a coverage over the subclavius muscle, or form a capsule over the subclavius muscle. Okay, so below the clavicle it forms, it splits and encloses the subclavius muscle. Okay, and posterior lamina okay, so the posterior lamina is fused to the investing layer of the deep cervical fascia and the axillary sheet. So any time when something splits into two, right? In this case, it is splitting into an anterior portion and a posterior portion, right? And the subclavius is being enclosed in the middle of the anterior and the posterior sheets. Okay, so the posterior sheet is continuous with the deep cervical fascia as well as the axillary sheet. Okay, so that is what they're trying to say. Now inferiorly, it is going to split to enclose which muscle? Pectoralis minor muscle. And medially, it is attached to the external intercostal muscles. You can see over here, I told you what are the external intercostal muscles. They are the muscles attached to the external side of the ribs, and so it is attached to the external intercostal muscles medially to the upper external intercostal muscles. Okay, laterally it is attached to the coracoid process. Below it continues as the suspensory ligament. Here it continues as the suspensory ligament below, okay, here. It continues as the suspensory ligament. What do you mean by suspensory? It helps in suspension or hanging. So if you see a bridge like Howrah Bridge or London Bridge, for example, to carry the load of the bridge, they'll have these suspensions, okay, which is attached to the beam of the bridge. What is its purpose? To pull the bridge up, or to transmit the forces of the bridge upwards towards the beam, right? So that is the same function of the suspensory ligament. So below it forms a suspensory ligament attached to the axillary fascia and keeps the axillary fascia pulled upwards. Okay, so the fibers of the clavipectoral fascia are going to be pulled upwards, and that will cause the pulling upwards of the axillary fascia and keeping it up. Okay, so did you all understand the boundaries of the clavipectoral fascia? So I'm removing the pectoralis minor. Okay, so below this, here you can see these sheet-like muscles. This is
Yes.
the external intercostal muscles. So you can see there are two fibrous bands. Okay, so if I have to draw this, let me just okay, let me draw it over here. So if I have to draw the two ribs for you, so this is rib number 1, for example, and this is rib number 2. Okay, so between the rib number 1 and rib number 2, this is the anterior surface, and at the back is your posterior surface. So here you can see this is the anterior surface, and the external intercostal muscles are attaching to it like this. Okay, so this is how the external intercostal muscles will attach to the ribs. Now the internal intercostal muscles will attach in the opposite, in the posterior surface like this. And they don't attach to the next rib, but they attach to the alternate rib. So when I teach you the intercostals, I'll tell you that in detail. But you should know that there are two fibrous bands present. One fibrous band in the front and the other one behind. Okay, let me show you this model from behind. So this is your external intercostal muscles, right? So here, this is from behind, right? The posterior surface, you can see the innermost intercostal. If you remove the innermost intercostal, you will see the internal intercostal muscles. Are you following? So
Yeah,
this is the
yeah, yeah.
external, that is from the outside, and this is the internal, that is from the inside. And there's another sheet of muscle called as the innermost intercostal as well, that is even more inside. So there are 3 bands altogether, but from the outside you can see 2 bands. Okay, so that's with regards to the intercostal muscles. Now when you come to the clavipectoral fascia, here, so you have the clavicle above. Okay, here you can see the coracoid process laterally where the fascia attaches. Then above you have the clavicle, below it continues as the axillary sheath, right? So inferiorly it splits to enclose the pectoralis minor and continues as the axillary sheath. Here it splits to enclose to the subclavius muscle. So how many muscles is it enclosing? It is enclosing 2 muscles. One muscle is the subclavius above and the other one is the pectoralis minor muscle below. Okay, so here if you see, yeah, so here if you see, this is your subclavius muscle on top, that is right below the clavicle. You can see the subclavius muscle. So if I have to draw, yeah, so if I have to draw the clavipectoral fascia, that is going to enclose the subclavius muscle. From front you have one fascial sheath. Okay, so from front you have one fascial sheath like this. Okay, and from behind like here, you will have one fascial sheath here. Okay, in this region over here. So basically it is forming 2 layers and it is enclosing the subclavius muscle. Okay, so if this is your subclavius muscle, in the front it looks like this. Okay, the clavipectoral fascia is going to cover the front like this, and if I turn it around, it's going to cover from the back also in the same way. Okay, so this is your superior surface of your subclavius muscle, which attaches to the clavicle. So the clavipectoral fascia will look like this. Okay, so this is the posterior fibers, and this is the anterior fibers, or the posterior lamina and the anterior lamina. Okay, so the posterior lamina will continue with the deep cervical fascia as well as the axillary sheath. The anterior lamina will continue, the anterior lamina just lies below the pectoralis major muscle. Okay, so if I have to show you this as well as the pectoralis major, so here you can see this is the pectoralis major, right? And this is the anterior surface of the subclavius muscle. This side is the posterior surface of the subclavius muscle. I'm looking at it from above. Now, if I have to draw the clavipectoral fascia, it would look like this. There is one laminal sheet that is right below the pectoralis major. There is one sheet behind the subclavius muscle, and this will enclose the subclavius muscle and continue. Okay, so it would be something like this, and it will continue here as well as over here. Is this making sense to you all?
Yes.
Yeah, this is the anterior lamina, this is the posterior lamina, which will be continuous with the deep cervical fascia and the axillary sheet behind. Okay, so this is again a 5 marker. What is clavipectoral fascia, and also what are its boundaries, and what is it pierced by? Okay, now what is it pierced by? Of course, it's going to be pierced by the lateral pectoral nerve, right? So it is pierced by the lateral pectoral nerve, the cephalic vein. So if I have to show you cephalic vein, there you go. So this is the cephalic vein. See, you can see it going right through the clavipectoral fascia, right? So lateral pectoral nerve, cephalic vein, then thoracoacromial artery, and the lymphatics of breast and pectoral region. So there you can see this very small artery over there, that is the thoracoacromial artery. So that is a branch of the acromial artery. So all these are the different things that pierce the clavipectoral fascia. That is your lateral pectoral nerve, cephalic vein, thoracoacromial artery, and lymphatics of the breast and the pectoral region. Okay, that ends your clavipectoral fascia. Now coming to the serratus anterior muscle, there are a few things that are important in the serratus anterior muscle. It is also called as what? It is also called as the boxer muscle, right? So this is your serratus anterior muscle. There. So this is your serratus anterior muscle with its origins and its insertions, right? So it has how many digitations? It has 8 digitations. In total, it has 8 slips or 8 digitations from the upper 8 ribs. Some books say 1 to 9, but the other books say 1 to 8. Okay, but mostly it is 1 to 9 because the second rib has 2 digitations arising from it. Okay, so 1 to 8 because the second rib has 2 digitations arising from it. The fascia is fascia covering the intervening intercostal muscles. The first digitation appears from the posterior triangle of the neck. So here you can see this is the first digitation which appears from the posterior triangle of the neck. The posterior triangle of the neck is over here, and it arises from inside the posterior triangle of the neck. Okay, it arises from the outer border of the first rib. So this is the outer border of the first rib, and from the rough impression of the second rib. So here behind the coracoid process, a little bit on the second rib. So the first digitation from the posterior triangle of the neck, outer border of the first rib, and rough impression of the second rib. Okay. Also, the 5th to 8th digitations interdigitate with the costal origin of the external oblique muscle. So the external oblique muscle also has similar origins in the 5th to 8th region. Okay, so let me show you the external oblique and then you'll understand. So here you can see their interdigitation, right, between the digits of the external oblique and the digits of the serratus anterior, starting from the 5th. So 5, 6, 7 and 8, right? 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th will have its interdigitation with the origin of the external oblique muscle as well. Okay, so did you understand the serratus anterior origin? The first serratus anterior digit originates from posterior triangle of the neck, outer border of the first rib and the rough impression of the second rib. Okay, then the 5th to 8th digitations interdigitate with the origin of the external oblique muscle. Okay, so that's with regards to origin of the serratus anterior muscle. And insertion, they all pass backwards. All the 8 digitations pass backwards around the chest wall and inserts into the costal surface of the scapula along its medial border. So like I told you yesterday, this is the costal surface or the anterior surface of the scapula, and this is the medial border of the scapula. This is the anterior surface, right? Costal surface. So that is where the 8 digitations attach. The first digitation is inserted from the superior angle to the root of the spine. So here the first digitation from the superior angle of the scapula to the root of the spine. So this is the root of the spine, superior angle of the scapula, and here the first digitation is attached. Okay. The next 2 to 3 digitations are inserted lower in the medial border, and the lower 4 to 5 are in a large triangular area below the near the inferior angle. Okay, over the inferior angle. So here superior angle, from the superior angle to the spine is the first digitation. Then you have the other digitations over here, and then the lower 4 to 5 are near in a triangular area near the inferior angle of the scapula. Okay, so if I have to show you from here the insertion, this is the superior angle of the scapula, right? So from here to here is the insertion of the first interdigitation. Okay, from the superior angle to the spine of the scapula. So from here onwards you have the next 4 or 5, then here you have the last 4 or 5 in the inferior angle in a triangular space. Is that clear? So here 1, then next 2 or 3, then here you have the last 4 or 5. Okay, so this is with regards to insertion of the serratus anterior. Is this clear? Now coming to the nerve supply, it's by this nerve over here. You can see where is long thoracic. Yeah, this nerve over here, which arises from C5, C6 and C7. The nerve enters through the apex of the axilla. So this is the apex of the axilla, right? So it enters through the apex of the axilla behind the first part of the axillary artery to reach the medial wall of the axilla. So axilla is a triangular space between your ribs and your arm. Okay, we'll be learning axilla next. So it arises from the apex of the axilla, then along the medial border of the axilla, and it lies on the surface of the muscle serratus anterior. So you can see it is lying on the surface of the serratus anterior muscle. Okay, C5 will supply first and second interdigitation, and C6 third and fourth, and C7 fifth to eighth. Okay, so that is how it is distributed. This is the long thoracic nerve. Okay, and the action, muscle pulls the scapula forward around the chest wall, and its fibers are inserted into the inferior angle of the scapula, right? The fibers are inserted into the inferior angle of the scapula, which pulls it forward and rotates the scapula and the glenoid cavity upwards. Now, how does it do that? This is the inferior angle of the scapula. You can see some serratus anterior fibers that are attached only to the inferior angle, right? So it's going to rotate the inferior angle of the scapula laterally. Okay, so when it rotates the inferior angle laterally, what happens to the glenoid cavity? By lever action, it will go upwards like this, right? The entire scapula is going to rotate like this. So that is what they mean by the glenoid cavity is going to rotate upwards. The inferior angle is going to rotate laterally. The glenoid cavity will rotate upwards. It's like a secondary action. When the scapula is rotating from bottom like this, of course the top also is going to rotate the other side, right? The anti-clockwise rotation of the scapula, and that is what the serratus anterior will help in. In this action, it is helped by the trapezius, which pulls the acromion upward and backward. So the trapezius muscle will pull it has attachment to the acromion. So it will pull the acromion upward and backward like that. So this will help the action of the serratus anterior muscle. Okay, it steadies the scapula during weight carrying and also helps in forced inspiration. Now the clinical feature, paralysis of serratus anterior causes winging of scapula, in which the inferior angle and the medial border of the scapula are prominent. So what happens here? If the serratus anterior, you can see, is pulling the inferior angle and the medial border of the scapula forward and holding it against the chest wall, correct? Now if this serratus anterior is not working, what will happen? This inferior angle will not be held against the chest wall, so it will move against, so it will protrude out of your skin. So that is called as winging of the scapula. Okay, if the serratus anterior is not working properly, there is nothing pulling the inferior angle and the medial border towards the chest wall, so it will be very prominent. Okay, from the skin, from outside the skin. Okay, the patient is unable to do any pushing action or boxing action, nor can he raise his arms above his head. So if the serratus anterior is not working, then he cannot raise his arms above his head. Why? Because the glenoid cavity is not pulled upwards, right? So he cannot raise his arms above his head if the serratus anterior is not working. Any attempt to make these movements makes the inferior angle more prominent from outside the skin. Okay, so that's with regards to winging of the scapula. So here you can see the inferior angle. This part over here is the inferior angle and this is the medial border. You can see how it is so prominent from outside the skin, correct? So that is called as winging of scapula. Here you can see this is a normal scapula, whereas this, or here, this is a normal scapula, whereas this is a winged scapula. You can see the entire thing is protruding out of the body like a wing of an angel, right? And it causes a lot of pain. And this person cannot raise his arms upwards. If he raises his arms, the winging will become more prominent. Is that clear? So what all have we seen till now? I told you about the pectoralis major, structures undercover, bilaminar tendon. Then we spoke about clavipectoral fascia, okay? And also the borders of the clavipectoral fascia and what is it pierced by. Then we spoke about serratus anterior muscle, origin, insertion, nerve supply and action in detail. Okay, so this is the nerve, right? The long thoracic nerve. This is the long thoracic nerve, which supplies the serratus anterior, right? You can see its course. First, it is entering the apex of the axilla, correct? And then it goes along the medial border of the axilla. Then on the surface of the serratus anterior muscle. Okay. What are its origins? It originates from C5, 6 and 7. Okay. So 5 supplies the first 2 interdigitations, 6 supplies the next 3 interdigitations, then 7 supplies 5 to 8. Okay. So they divide themselves like that, 5, 6 and 7. Okay. So it is from the brachial plexus, of course. It is formed by the roots, spinal roots of C5, C6 and C7. Let me just zoom that in for you so that you can see clearly. So here you can see the long thoracic nerve coming from C5, C6, C7. Can you see that? And forming one single nerve. So that is with regards to the long thoracic nerve. It supplies the serratus anterior muscle. Here you can see it very clearly. This is the, one second, let me remove this nerve here. So this is the long thoracic nerve over here that is coming from C5, C6 and C7. And what does it, and also it enters the axilla from the apex and then goes along the medial border of the axilla and then along the surface of the serratus anterior. Now the C5 branches are going to supply the first and the second digitations. The rest of them, like this third and fourth, are supplied by the C6, and 5 to 8 are supplied by the C7. Is that clear? Long thoracic nerve, I told you it is supplied by, or it arises from C5, C6 and C7, correct? So the long thoracic nerve, when it comes from C5, C6 and C7, each part of this nerve is going to supply, or the fibers of each of these spinal nerves are going to supply different parts of the serratus anterior muscle, correct? So the C5 nerves or C5 fibers are going to supply the first and the second digitations, which is this region over here. Okay, C6 is going to supply the third and the fourth digitation, which is over here. Then the C7 is from the 5th to 8th digitation, which is over here, right? So imagine the C5 spinal root is injured, then this part will be paralyzed. If the C6 spinal root is injured, this part will be paralyzed. C7 spinal root is injured, this part will be paralyzed. Did you understand this? As well as if the long thoracic nerve is injured in any of the following regions, right? After it leaves the spinal nerves, if after the spinal nerves join together to form the long thoracic nerve, if it is injured in any of these regions, it will still cause the complete paralysis of serratus anterior muscle. This is a very small topic, the deltopectoral triangle. It can be learnt over here, or it can be learnt in the axilla as well, but I'll since it's there, the PPT, yeah, much better. So here you can see between the deltoid muscle and the clavicular head of the pectoralis major, there is a very small gap over here. Okay, let me zoom into that gap. So that is called as the deltopectoral triangle. Okay, it is a triangular space between the deltoid muscle and the clavicular head of the pectoralis major muscle. It is visible in very thin people. Okay, so this is with regards to deltopectoral triangle. Okay, it contains lymph nodes called as infraclavicular lymph nodes and the termination of the cephalic vein. Okay, so infraclavicular lymph nodes are present over here below the clavicle, where you will have the lymph nodes over here. Okay, below they are a chain of lymph nodes found below the clavicle, and then you have the cephalic vein, right? It's on this side. I'm not put it on this side, but it comes somewhere over here, the cephalic vein. Okay, so that is with regards to the deltopectoral triangle. Now the floor of the deltopectoral triangle is of course formed by the clavipectoral fascia, which is below the pectoralis minor muscle, right, and below the clavicle. So that is the floor of the deltopectoral triangle. So it could be asked as a 3-marker. What is a deltopectoral triangle? It is a triangular space between the clavicular head of the pectoralis major and below the deltoid muscle, between the deltoid muscle and the clavipectoral, the clavicular head of pectoralis major. Its floor is formed, of course, by the clavipectoral fascia, and it contains the terminal part of the cephalic vein as well as the infraclavicular lymph nodes, the lymph nodes that lie below the clavicle, the infraclavicular lymph nodes. Okay, so today what all did we learn? We learned about the pectoralis major, pectoral structures under the pectoralis major, bilaminar tendon of the pectoralis major. Then we learned clavipectoral fascia, its boundaries and what it's pierced by. Then we learned about the serratus anterior muscle in detail, and then we learned about the deltopectoral triangle. Okay, so this ends the muscles of the pectoral region.